December 14th, 2015. I'll talk about this in a second. Choke point. Like in the movie 300. The movie 300, where King Leonidas battled Xerxes with his superior force through a choke point. A small little area where you could decrease the front of the incoming enemy, therefore rendering larger numbers ineffectual. You had to move through that point in order to defeat the challenger. But Xerxes couldn't do that, and no matter how many people he threw at him, he could cut him off at that choke point. So basically, to get from where you are to where you want to go, you have to pass through a small little area. And in that small area, you have to deal with the people who are in the way. And this has everything to do with the theory that I've been working on, as well as other people who may understand this theory, who understand the main idea, is that stars inside of establishment are believed to be not equal to planets. That's the current dogma. And then you have a choke point, meaning if they acknowledge that stars are simply young planets, what happens is you have to pass through that choke point. You can't acknowledge it publicly or even inside your own mind without actually having found these ideas. For instance, if you're going to be an astronomer and you're going to write a paper on stars simply evolving into something that's more planet-like, you're going to run into whatever it is I was writing. The people who have came before me, even Oprah, Lord Kelvin, Anthony Abruzzo, Charles Nono has some stuff on there now. Michael Z, I can't pronounce his last name, who also developed a new concept of astron to define both the star and planet as one singular thing, to make sure our lines of communication were much clearer, and that stars are new astrons and planets are young astrons. But say star is a young planet and a planet is old star is it's weird. They're both astrons. But basically, if you want to be a part of the choke point, if you want to increase the width of the choke point, I suggest writing a paper, because it's a lot harder for scientists to move through a small little gap, especially when there's not enough information. But if there are more people who write about it, who talk about it, that gap gets bigger, so it's easier for astronomers to move through that gap. As well, for the amount of the very small amount of people who actually understand astrophysics in the way it needs to be understood, they're very small. There's very small numbers. In all honesty, I think in 2011 it rose to a maximum of about 6 or 7 people who understood it. In 2012, I think maybe about 200 or 300 people. In 2013, at least about 1,000. In 2014, about 2,000. In 2015, I think about 5 to 6, maybe even 7,000 people understand it. But very few are willing to put themselves out there and write a short paper on it. But that's essential if you want to increase the understanding, if you want to share the understanding, and if you want to make that choke point wider. That way there's less pressure to go through that choke point. Think of a gas, okay? You have a gas, and obviously if you compress the gas, you heat it up it gets hot if you compress it. Now, being that the gas is very diffuse, when you compress it to that choke point, it will get really, really hot. And a good analogy would be, if you take a bunch of if you're a bunch of scientists and you put them in a room and you tell them something they disagree with, they'll get really angry and hot, you know. They don't want that stuff to, they don't want what I'm talking about to be true, because it means everything that they were taught is mostly incorrect. But if you can increase the size of that choke point, there's less that gas will have to be compressed, and there's less that will heat up. So it will be easier for that information to travel through and for people to go into the other side. You have to take them through to the other side. That's the whole point of this theory. And increasing the size of that choke point is what I want to do. So in essence, it's not a military thing from my perspective, though it does appear to be so, because if you want to travel from one side to the other, you have to pass through this choke point. As well, once the gas exits the choke point and then re-expands again, it'll cool down again. And that's what the scientists don't understand. They'll go back to normal again, only it'll be a completely different worldview that they're going to enter into. In essence, all biologists, all chemists, all physicists have to pass through this choke point. And the more people who can expand this area by writing a short little paper on it, it doesn't have to be anything in depth, and they put their name on it, they'll be found by other people on the internet, and more understanding will come through. Another good analogy would be like a dam breaking. You have a bunch of welled up water over here, and if you have a small little area where the dam breaks, water flows through at very high velocity, ripping away at the concrete. Eventually, the more and more water that passes through it, the more the dam disintegrates in that area, and before you know it, the whole dam falls apart and all the water comes rushing over. It's a gate, a large gate, a water gate being destroyed. In essence, I don't like the idea of it being a cosmic water gate, because I think that belongs to the people who've been working on the UFO and the flying saucer and the extraterrestrial matter. That's the cosmic water gate. I think this is more or less a science water gate, when human beings understand that what they're standing on isn't just a bunch of rocks and minerals. It has a history. It's very rich with processes that have happened in the past. I mean, the amount of information that's just inside of dirt is incredible. You have crystals in there. You have organisms that have been decomposing. You have fossils. You have so much information that you can get from just dirt alone. And to think the entire thing is comprised of dirt, rocks, and minerals, and even has a huge iron-nickel core. Like, the astronomers and geologists, they sort of kind of gloss over all that stuff. They say, oh well, it's the iron catastrophe, iron just sunk there, and then they run away from it because they don't really know what they're doing. But now that we know that these objects are not mutually exclusive, that stellar evolution is the process of planet formation itself, we can continue on with science, and we can make the universe a much more understandable, richer, more grounded place, other than what the establishment has to offer, which is, dark matter, dark energy, and the Big Bang mythology. I don't think that has any place in 21st century science. I think we need to erase that and essentially put the books in some kind of archive and then forget we ever wrote them. You don't have to burn them, just put them in archive so we can just look at them and be like, holy shit, we were dumb back in the day. Alright, I think that sums it up. Later.